Well, thank you, Jeff. That's I don't know about being the brains of the operation, but I do appreciate it. As Jeff said, my name is JD Rucker, and it's a great honor and a blessing to be able to welcome everybody to the Saving America Conference. It's very important that we bond together as conservatives, as Americans, as patriots, and really address the issues that are rising. These issues have been here for a long time, but they're really hitting home today. I do want to encourage everybody to ask questions in the chat. Jeff's going to keep track of that. If you have a question and he thinks it's important enough, he can break in. I love taking questions. Throw them at me. Or if we can't get to your questions live, we'll answer them later. So what is the American conservative movement? As we form it, it's important that we establish this foundation upon which to build a grassroots effort that will address the issues that are important to Americans today, as well as in the future. And therein lies a big challenge, because not everybody's aware. There are too many Americans who do not recognize that our freedoms are under attack right in front of our eyes. As Phil Ivey wrote to John Podesta in the infamous 2016 WikiLeaks emails, he said that basically the radical progressives need people ignorant of civics because they want the population to be, and I quote, unaware and compliant. We're seeing the worst manifestations of this happening today. I mean, you just turn on the news, sometimes you have to look to alternative news sources to find the stories that should be really important to us. Stories about people who are out there, they're doing their thing, they're social distancing, they're just trying to enjoy their day, bring some sense of normalcy to their lives, and yet they're still getting ticketed. They're still getting arrested in some cases. We see drive-in churches that are being stopped. I mean, how does the coronavirus get into your car if your windows are up? How can you gather in a parking lot and still be a risk to yourself or your family or others around you? You can't. But the authoritarianism is rampant, and they're pushing it further. We see, I don't know if anybody caught the Philadelphia bus patron. This guy's riding a bus. He didn't have a mask on, and several police officers had to physically drag him off the bus. Now, I get it. We all want to be safe. I'm not one of those people who believes the coronavirus is fake or that it's not a serious concern. I think it's serious. And I think that things like social distancing as a recommendation is fine, but it should stop there. It needs to stop as a recommendation. It doesn't need to be a mandate. The mandates to have businesses shut down across the country, utterly destroying our economy. This is not the way that America should be operating. We see surfers out there they're in the middle of the ocean. Think about that. In the middle of the ocean, I don't think you can social distance any better than to be surfing in the middle of the ocean. And yet they're getting ticketed and often arrested. There was a story a couple weeks ago, or I think it was last week, of a gentleman playing t-ball in the park where he was allowed to be, keep in mind. The park was closed, but it was allowed to be there with parties of 4 or less. And yet he gets put into handcuffs in front of his 6-year-old daughter and wife. Why? Because he wasn't complying. Okay. And they don't want us to be aware of our rights, and they do want us to comply to anything. Now, what do I mean when I say they? Is it just the Democrats? Is it just the Republicans? No. This challenge to our liberty that's been brought on by the coronavirus, but that existed long before the coronavirus was ever a thing and will exist long after the coronavirus is gone. This challenge to our liberties has been rising, and it's been across both parties. Now, we can look at the statistics, we can look at the facts, and we realize that yes, it's generally Democrats who are pushing the authoritarianism, who are trying to subvert our rights. But there are Republicans too. They don't get a pass. We need to, as a movement, be able to address everybody honestly. And that means going after Democrats, Republicans, independents, people in government who do not abide by the Constitution. That's the only thing that I'm going to comply to. Okay, I'm a Christian, so I will comply to the Bible willingly, lovingly, and I will comply to the Constitution. And that's it, pretty much. I mean, you can break it down to those two things. We need to get back to work as a nation. And if we don't stand up today and push back against what our quote-unquote leaders are doing, then all will be lost. And I'm not trying to be dramatic here. They really will be lost. So what is it the American conservative movement wants to do? What is our goal? Are we just another rah rah, put out memes on social media? No, we have plans to do quite a bit more than that. And this is the start. The Saving America Conference has the intended goal of getting the word out about who we are, bringing like-minded patriots together, and coming up with a plan. We don't have the full plan yet. We have ideas. We've been talking to a lot of people. We're seeing things that are happening out there. I'm here in Southern California, and I saw yesterday in Huntington Beach where people were gathering together and carrying signs and rallying and protesting against these draconian measures coming from the state government, coming from Governor Gavin Newsom. That's what we want to do. We want to participate in that. We want to participate in, Operation Gridlock in Lansing, Michigan. We want to help the pre-existing conservative movements out there, these groups of patriots who are fighting back. We want to help to organize it, to instigate it, to push for the type of actions that we're just not seeing from a whole bunch of other conservative groups out there. There's great ones. I don't want to sit here and complain about, these guys aren't doing this or these guys aren't doing that. But, the ones that are doing a great job, such as, like I said, the ones here locally in California, the ones in Pennsylvania, they're planning something. In Texas, there's a big planned rally coming up, of course, in Lansing, Michigan. Those groups are being effective and they're doing something. And then you look at groups like Judicial Watch. They've got a niche for going after from a legal perspective, and that's awesome. We want to be able to help them. You got Project Veritas, who's exposing the corruption of leftism across the board. They go after anybody, whether it's media, politicians, big tech companies. They are fearless, and we do support them. When you look at the overarching, the national conservative groups, for the most part, and I'm a member of many of them, but for the most part, they're growing for the sake of growth. They do their fundraising, not necessarily put funds towards helping, the rally in Michigan, the rallies that are happening all across the country, the protests that are absolutely necessary to tell not just the politicians, but also the rest of the people that it's time to push back. They're not helping them, and we want to. So that's where, that's the predicate, I guess you could say. Why didn't we just go out and join another movement? Frankly, I tried. I looked at a lot of them. I've been considering this American conservative movements all the way back to 2009. We actually had several meetings with people, staunch conservatives that I knew, that wanted to do something. At the time, there was this existential threat to our freedoms in the form of President Barack Obama and a very radical set of Democrats on Capitol Hill. At the time, back in 2009, they had the White House, the House of Representatives, the Senate. They were in charge, and they were putting forth a radical agenda, which is why we got Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. So we wanted to do something, anything. And we were pushing forward. We were making plans, but then something happened. The Tea Party popped up. And frankly, it was awesome. At the time, we thought, hey, they're doing the things we want to do. Let's go ahead and just support them. And we did. And so the American conservative movement was, I guess, kind of put on hold for a while. But then things have been changing, especially recently. And starting in mid-2008, right around the time just before the midterm elections, the concept popped back in my head, and I started looking for the right people. And praise God, I found them in Jeff Dornick and Ken Peters and Sam Jones. These guys are tremendous, and you'll be able to hear all of them speak later today. So if we're going to be a new group, a new conservative movement, and we're not going to be relying on memes, what is it that we are going to do? Well, you can go to our website. Let me pull it up on my end. You can go to our website, and you can see pretty much our plan. It's a general plan, but it's not generic. We have certain things that we want to accomplish, and we have plans on how we want to accomplish it. First and foremost, preventing authoritarianism. We're seeing it everywhere. Gretchen Wilmer, whatever her name is Whitmer, is out there saying that we can't buy seeds. And she's complaining that, well, it's snowing anyway, so what are you going to do with your seeds? You can't plant them anyway, right? No, that's not her call. I mean, technically it is her call, but she shouldn't be making that call. Okay, she's governor. She has that power. But we need to be the ones that are out there saying, no, we do not comply. We will not comply because that is idiotic. That is draconian. That is not going to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. It's not going to save lives. It's not going to help the economy or anything like that. It's just you being a tyrant. And that's what's happening across the country right now. There is this tyranny that is rising up. Keep in mind, these people were not just suddenly tyrannical. Okay, Gavin Newsom, Andrew Cuomo, Phil Murphy, governor over in New Jersey. This wasn't like, now we're going to be tyrants, but we weren't before. No, they always were. Okay, they always were deep down. The coronavirus has allowed them to basically express this tyranny, to test the waters, to see, let's see how far people are going to allow us to go, how many of their rights they're going to allow us to take away. And that's really what it comes down to, which brings me to the second, I guess you could say, goal on our website, which is to protect our rights. Look, our rights are not given to us by government. People look at the Constitution. I think a lot of people incorrectly say, I've been given the constitutional right to do this. That's not actually accurate. Okay, our rights are given to us as Americans, as people, from a higher power. The Constitution defends those rights from our leaders, from politicians, from our representatives, the people in D.C., the people at our state capitals, in local government. The Constitution is to prevent them from subverting our rights. So, yes, it is very important, that second goal of protecting our rights. We want to promote conservatism as our third goal. I am a firm believer that the majority of Americans would be conservative, or would at least consider themselves conservative, if they understood what that even meant. Today there are so many, particularly minorities, such as myself, who they will go and they just assume, I must be a Democrat because that's what my family's always been, and I must be a leftist because that's what my family's always been, and I guess I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. If we can alert people, educate them, show them what conservatism is really about, and compare that to their actual values, they will find, many of them will find, I believe that somewhere between 60 to 70% of people would consider themselves conservative if they understood what that really meant, if they did an honest examination of their values, what they believe in, and compared it to the ideologies that are presented to them today by the various political parties and other politicians. Lastly, as a goal, and I know I'm going a little bit long here, but lastly, as a goal, we want to reverse globalism. It's happening, and the coronavirus should be a wake-up call. Okay, folks, we should not be getting our medical equipment from China. Okay, we should not be reliant on the Chinese Communist Party or anyone else. We don't have to be. This is changing. I'm not just talking about economically. I'm talking about the spreading globalism that's occurring. We're becoming beholden in many ways to the United Nations, to this quote unquote global community. Jeff had mentioned in the intro that the major networks are putting on an event today or tonight, whatever, and it's literally called One World, this One World event. Folks, for years, the quote-unquote conspiracy theorists have been saying that globalism is a real problem. And I think a lot of people, and for a while, even myself, even I was skeptical of, what New World Order, Illuminati, don't give me that stuff. Well, listen, whether you believe in these conspiracy theories, whether you believe in some bigger plan to suppress the United States, to bring our downfall, to make us beholden to the United Nations, you don't have to believe in all that to take a look and realize that globalism is a real thing. It's happening, and it's being pushed forward by politicians of all stripes. Republicans, Democrats, doesn't matter. I'm not one who's an isolationist, and I don't think that America needs to isolate itself from everybody else. But we can't be dependent on anyone, okay? We don't have to be. This is the United States of America. We have what we need right here. We can help others if they're, as President Trump often says, if they're willing to pay for it, then sure, we can help them. We can do the things that'll benefit us. And this is a good thing for the globe, keep in mind. I think that if more nations focused on nationalism, focused on not trying to branch out and be part of this one world, whatever, that they all would be in better shape. There's going to be some that need help, and we can help them. Russia can help them. Heck, China could help them. If I don't know if they want China's help at this point, but China could help them. So that's a big problem. So those are the four things. We want to prevent authoritarianism, protect our rights, promote conservatism, and reverse globalism. So how do we do that? This too is on the homepage of our website, AmericanConservativeMovement.com. First and foremost, we want to speak out. That's just not, having these conferences. This is great. This is a great first step because we are going to speak out. You're going to hear some incredible speakers, much better than me today. People like Trevor Loudon, who's coming up here in about 10 minutes. People like Mindy Robinson, who has used her voice and her status, her celebrity status, to promote some of the most patriotic things I've seen on Twitter and on social media and on her website. You have people like Michael Johns, co-founder of the Tea Party, who has been there, done that, pretty much across the board. If there's something that's happening in government, he's seen it. He's been there. He's been doing it for decades. You have Pastor Greg Locke. My goodness, this is a guy that knows his stuff when it comes to defending our rights, not just biblically. He's a pastor, so yeah, his focus on the Bible. But if you look at his Twitter account, you'll see, or his Facebook page, he's not just out there saying, oh, God. He's also saying, look, we've got to fight back against this authoritarianism, against the subversion of our rights, against the suppression of the Constitution, because he's an American. First and foremost, he's a child of God. Secondly, he's an American. And I think that's how I would classify myself as well. So, yes, we have conferences like these. We're going to be very active on social media. We're going to be publishing things across the board at news sites. We're going to be doing interviews, other videos, podcasts, the works. But really, the best way to speak out, and I'll be talking about this during the panel interview later this afternoon with Mindy Robinson, Joshua Feuerstein, and Michael Johns. We'll be talking at least a little bit about civil disobedience. I'm not a big fan of it under normal circumstances, but these are not normal circumstances. These are crazy circumstances, and people need to start speaking out in that regard. And that's something that we're going to be participating in as a movement. Number two, we want to educate Americans. Like I said earlier, if people just understood what conservatism was, they would be willing to embrace it. They would look deeper into it. They would come to the conclusion, in many cases, that, by golly, they're conservatives as well. So, yeah, that's important. We need to educate. There's not enough of that happening today, at least from a conservative perspective. The education system itself is rife with progressivism, with hyper-leftism. We're not just talking about, leaning to the left a little bit. We're talking about promoting the ideas of Marxism, socialism, communism. This is what when we send our children to school at all levels, when they grow up to be adults and they go to college, they're being bombarded by this stuff. We need to help to counter that indoctrination that's happening in the schools. We have to inform the masses. Now, that's different from education. I am in my DNA is journalism, and we are all familiar with the quote unquote fake news media. We're familiar that they're out there telling lies and changing narratives and suppressing some news that doesn't benefit them, but then amplifying other news that will benefit them and or the leftists. We have to help to fight this by participating, again, in media, participating in getting the word out. Jeff, he's a great podcaster. He's the one that got me into it very recently, and I'm very blessed to have made that decision because it's fun, But more importantly, it's important, okay? This is important stuff this is important news that we have to get out there. And it's different, again, like I said, from education. Last but not least, somebody has to watch government. And I'm not just talking about your standard watchdogs out there. There are some very good ones. I mentioned Judicial Watch earlier. Those guys, they find corruption like nobody's ever seen in American history. They are good at this stuff. But others have to be out there as well. We need to be able to watch what they're doing. And it's not just the big news, the big executive orders that are attacking our freedoms. We have to watch for the little ones as well. In many cases, it's the most needed element today. Little insertions into legislation at the state and national level. Little rules changes. Somebody, it went unnoticed for several days when, I forgot which city it was, but a mayor in some city had decreed their stay-at-home order, and hidden within it was essentially a suppression, or the ability. It wasn't a suppression, but it was the ability granted by the mayor to subvert our Second Amendment rights to keep and bear arms. What does that have to do with the coronavirus? How is that going to stop anything? The answer is it won't. But these little tyrants out there see this as an opportunity, and they're going to take it. So the ability for us to watch government, read the fine print, and alert people at the local level, or city, or county, or state, or national level, depending upon where the problem occurs. We want to be able to inform people. So that's why I strongly encourage everyone to go to AmericanConservativeMovement.com. Just below the video, which you may be even watching right now, just below it, you'll see a little form that you can fill out and join this movement. We're not going to. I've gotten a lot of questions. People are you going to sell this to politicians or the GOP or anything like that? No. Our lists. If you sign up with us, you're with us. You're with us, and we're not going to use that, parlay that into some sort of whatever. I don't even know how that stuff works, but we wouldn't do that. We want our members to be ours, and we want to be able to keep you informed. Others have asked if I join, can I leave? Absolutely. It's very easy. It's literally a click of a couple of buttons, and you're gone. You'll never hear from us again. So please, it's not a risk. You're not under any obligation. Just go to AmericanConservativeMovement.com. Join us. Fill out the form, and we'll keep in contact with you. We'll keep you heading in the right direction. With that said, before I close, Jeff, are there any questions?
I believe that there was one question that was asking actually about education, which you were kind of touching on a little bit earlier, where they said 68% of every state budget is spent on public education. How are you going to deal with that? 50% of every state budget is borrowed. That means that of every actual dollar taken from the taxpayers, 95% goes to public education. Do we abolish that or no?
Okay, so if we want to get into policy questions, this could go on all day. I would love to answer that question directly, but I'll give you a little teaser. I've never been a big fan of the Department of Education. When we look at public funds going to education, a huge chunk of it goes directly to the National Department of Education. This was arguably, of all the things that Jimmy Carter did, that is probably the worst one, in my opinion. And when I say I'm not a fan, it's not just, let's cut them back or whatever. I would love to see the Department of Education abolished completely. This should be handled by states and local. The state should be, they should be a very hands-off, overarching entity. This should be handled at the local level. Who are the educators in this world? It should be parents. But government has inserted itself into it and taken that responsibility away. And unfortunately, too many people have complied to this. So that's the not so long answer, but I guess medium-sized answer. The short answer is yes, we need to figure out ways to make education something that is happening with more direct efforts made by parents. I'm not saying that every parent needs to be homeschooling, even though a lot of you are right now. Me and my wife happen to homeschool. That's great. We love it. But it's not necessarily for everybody. But I will say this. We cannot have an education system that is decreed and funded by taxpayers that at every level and then results in what we're seeing today. This whole push for control is based upon authoritarianism. And it's not just something where they pass laws. This happens through dependency. Right now, government is keeping the country closed. We have some that are pushing to open it up, business-wise. We have others that are pushing to keep it shut down. Why would they want to keep it shut down? It's not for protection. It's for control. Okay. The more dependent that people are on government, whether it's getting these stimulus checks or unemployment. Guys, this is not a bad thing in the eyes of these hyper-leftists, okay? The radical progressives, they would love to control everything. They would love to keep America shut down for as long as possible. And people are saying, oh, it's just so that they can beat Donald Trump in November. That's not it. That's not the only reason, okay? They really want you and me to be beholden to them. And the best way to do that is to make us reliant on them for food, for mortgage payments or rent, for car payments, for paying our bills. So let's end the dependency as quickly as possible. We're forming the American conservative movement with the sole purpose of bringing patriots together. You're going to hear the speakers today. These 12, 13 speakers, we're not the movement. You are. We just brought these people in, and we're out there doing podcasts and doing videos and writing articles and getting out there for the simple and pure purpose of bringing you guys together with us so that we can come up with solutions. We can't look to government for all the solutions. We can't look to government for nearly any solution. At this point, they have become more of a problem than a solution. And so we need to push back. We have freedoms. We have rights. But they're not going to defend themselves. You and I and the American conservative movement can work towards defending them for the rest of America. Thank you, guys.